Hey guys, welcome to my channel, and in today's video, we'll talk about the most controversial war and the disputed land of Ukraine. Without further ado, let me show you some facts about Ukraine, its past, and why it's been a conflict zone. Did you know Ukraine is the second largest country by area in Europe after Russia? Yes, it spans an area of 603,628 kilometers squared. 41.2 million people live in Ukraine, and it's the 8th most populous country in Europe. Ukrainian currency is Ukrainian hryvnia, and 29.36 hryvnia is around $1 United States dollar. Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe, suffering from a very high poverty rate as well as severe corruption. However, because of its extensive fertile farmlands, Ukraine is one of the largest exporters of grain, such as wheat, barley, maize, and rice in the world. Kyiv is the capital and largest city, and its population is around 3 million, making Kyiv the 7th most populous city in Europe. Human traces can be found in Ukraine and its vicinity dating all the way back to 32,000 BC, and this country has been a key center of the East Slavic culture. In the 13th century, the territorial unity collapsed, and the area was contested, divided, and ruled by a variety of powers, including the Mongols, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and the Tsardom of Russia. Later, in the 17th and 18th century, its territory was eventually split between Poland and the Russian Empire. The Russian Revolution of the 19th century was a period of political and social revolution that took place in the former Russian Empire, which began during the First World War. In the aftermath of the Russian Revolution, a Ukrainian national movement of self-determination emerged, and the internationally recognized Ukrainian People's Republic was declared on June 23, 1917. The Ukrainian SSR, or the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, also known as Soviet Ukraine, was a founding member of the Soviet Union in 1922. The country regained its independence in 1991 following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Following its independence, Ukraine declared itself a neutral state. It formed a limited military partnership with Russia and other CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and its regional, intergovernmental organization in Eastern Europe and Asia, countries, while also establishing a partnership with NATO in 1994. In 2013, after the government of President Viktor Yanukovych had decided to suspend the Ukrainian-European Union Association Agreement and seek closer economic ties with Russia, a several months-long wave of demonstrations and protests known as the Euromaidan began, which later escalated into the Revolution of Dignity that led to the overthrow of Yanukovych and the establishment of a new government.
Scenes that have brought the world to the brink of a new Cold War. Unarmed protesters gunned down in the streets by the riot police who were retreating from Kiev's Maidan Square.
Euromaidan was a wave of demonstrations and civil unrest in Ukraine, which began on the night of November 21, 2013, with public protests in Maidan Nezalnosti, or the Independence Square in Kyiv. The protests were sparked by the Ukrainian government's decision to suspend the signing of the European Union-Ukraine Association Agreement instead of choosing closer ties to Russia and the Eurasian Economic Union. The scope of protests widened, with calls for the resignation of the president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, and the second Azarov government. The protests were fueled by the precipitation of widespread government corruption, abuse of power, and violation of human rights in Ukraine. Transparency International named President Yanukovych as the top example of corruption in the world. The situation escalated after violent dispersal of protests on November 30th, leading to many more protesters joining. The protests led to the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution, known as the Revolution of Dignity. A total of 110 to 123 protesters and 18 police officers were killed in street clashes in the Ukrainian capital. These events formed the background for the annexation of Crimea by Russia in March 2014 and the beginning of the war in Donbas in April 2014. Crimea, still internationally recognized as being a part of Ukraine.
Intensity of the war in Ukraine that's supposed to have stopped. A battle that pitches a Western-leaning government against a rebel
army. On January 1, 2016, Ukraine joined the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Area with European Union, or the DCFTA, which aims to modernize and develop Ukraine's economy, governance and rule of law in EU standards, and gradually increase integration with the EU international market. The DCFTA are 3 free trade areas established between the European Union, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine respectively. Then, on May 11, 2017, the European Union approved visa-free travel for Ukrainian citizens. This took effect from June 11th, entitling Ukrainians to travel to the Schengen area for tourism, family visits, and business reasons, with the only document required being a valid biometric passport. In March and April of 2021, Russian President Vladmir Putin ordered the Russian military to begin massing thousands of military personnel and equipment near its borders with Ukraine and Crimea, representing the largest mobilization since the annexation of Crimea in 2014. This precipitated in an international crisis and generated concerns over a potential invasion. Satellite imagery showed movements of armor, missiles, and heavy weaponry. The troops were partially removed by June. This crisis was renewed in October and November 2021 when over 100,000 Russian troops were again massed around Ukraine on 3 sides by December. The ongoing crisis stems from the protracted Russo-Ukrainian war that began as an unrest in early 2014. In December 2021, Russia advanced 2 draft treaties that contain requests for what it referred to as security guarantees, including a legally binding promise that Ukraine would not join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, as well as a reduction in NATO troops and military hardware stationed in Eastern Europe, and threatened unspecified military response if those demands were not met in full. NATO has rejected these requests, and the United States warned Russia of swift and severe economic sanctions should it further invade Ukraine. This crisis has also centered around the ongoing war in Donbass. On February 1, 2022, Russia officially recognized the 2 breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine, the Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, as independent states, deployed troops to Donbass in a move interpreted as Russia's effective withdrawal from the Minsk Protocol. The breakaway republics were recognized in the boundaries of their respective Ukrainian oblasts, which extend far beyond the line of contact. On February 22nd, Putin said that the Minsk agreements were no longer valid. On the same day, the Federation Council unanimously authorized the use of military force in the territories. Russia has said that a possible Ukrainian accession to NATO and the NATO enlargement in general threaten its national security. In turn, Ukraine and other European countries neighboring Russia have accused Putin of attempting to restore the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union and of pursuing aggressive militaristic policies. Now, time will tell whether Ukraine will be a sovereign state or will we see a pro-Kremlin president in its place. I think that this concludes this video. Please give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. What are your opinions on the matter? Please share your thoughts in the comments area, and I'll see you when I get back.